The music's on, the disco ball has dropped, and it's time to get this party started. You're listening to episode 26 of DiscoTrek, a Star Trek Discovery After Party podcast here on the Tricorder Transmissions Network. I'm your host, Heather Barker, and unfortunately, Jeff Hewlett is lost in the Delta Quadrant. He'll be back soon, I'm sure, for the new season of Discovery. In the meantime, I still have two amazing hosts with me. They are both new members of our network. The first is the new host of Weekly Trek, our dear friend, Alex Perry. Welcome back and congratulations, and welcome to the network, Alex.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate it. I'm so excited to join.
We are super excited to hear the first episode of Weekly Trek with you as the host coming very, very soon. Our other host tonight, you've heard her on Weekly Trek. You've heard her here on DiscoTrek. She is new to our network and will be debuting soon with her own show. She is the great Allie Martinez. Hi, Allie.
Hi. Thanks so much for having me on.
Yay. I'm so excited to have both of you guys here. I just knew right away that I wanted to reach out and have our newest network members come and join me to talk about two short treks tonight. We're knocking both out with this episode. So first we're going to talk about the Brightest Star, and then we're going to talk about the Escape Artist. Since Jeff is not here with me tonight and normally handles the Patreon stuff, I'll just shout out really quickly. We do have a Patreon account to support the show. All of our patrons are super amazing and wonderful. It doesn't matter if you donate $1 a month, $10 a month. We are grateful for every little thing that you do. You get some pretty cool perks. You get first access to episodes. You get to listen to the unedited episodes, which are often pretty fun. We have a special member pen and lots of cool things. So our Patreon is the Tricorder Transmissions. So it's patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. And we look forward to having you join our Patreon family. So since we're talking about short treks, the show is a little bit different tonight. We're just going to have a general discussion about these two short treks, Brightest Star first, and then the Escape Artist after that. Season 2 of Discovery is premiering very, very soon, next week, I think, at this point, on the 17th. Once it's back in the air, we will be going back to our usual formats, posting in the unofficial Las Vegas convention group on Facebook. You'll see the DiscoTrek album art on there, and just comment to get a chance to come on the show. We will pick guests at random. We pick 2 guests for every episode. And once you've been on the show, you can't come back. When we're in the off season, we let you come back as often as you want, but we want to make sure everyone gets a fair chance to participate. So keep an eye on the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group on Facebook. If you're not already a member, please go ahead and join and let us know you found us via the podcast. All right. So we've got all of the short treks done now, although I heard, and Alex, you might know a little bit, that these aren't going to be the last of the short treks.
This is not the last of the short treks. Alex Kurtzman was doing a media blitz yesterday and the day before, a bunch of pieces in Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and he announced that there would be at least 2 more short treks that would be released after season 2, that they'll be coming sometime, he said, in the spring of this year, so not too long after season 2 wraps, and that both would be animated. We don't know any more than that, just that there'll be 2 more animated short treks. But it seems like from the other comments he was making around wanting to expand the animated series and potentially add, we obviously already have the first announced animated series, which is Lower Decks, but he said he also is planning at least 1 more animated series. So it's possible that the short treks could be tied into the plans to announce additional animated series.
So like a little preview, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's what would make the most sense. I mean, it's total speculation since we don't know anything about it, but that would seem to me to be the thing that would make the most sense, would be to do a little 15-minute preview of what these shows are going to be like.
That'll be kind of cool.
That's really exciting. I had an inkling that they might do something like that, especially with Lower Decks. But now that they announced that there might be another possible animated series, it just makes it all the more exciting.
The golden age of Star Trek yet again. There's so much good stuff. Make sure to listen to Weekly Trek. for all the news, because I didn't even know that they were animated short treks. So that's super exciting. Yeah. All right. So I think we can start this off by saying the short treks overall were really fun and everyone liked them for the most part. At least I think you guys will probably agree. I know there was some criticism, but Alex, are you a fan of the short treks?
Yeah, I liked them all. I thought this was a nice, fun way of passing the time before season 2. They were. I enjoyed them all, but I thought that they were a bit mixed, but I think I'm always interested in more Star Trek, and especially I think what the short treks really allowed the show to do was kind of go deep in some character spaces that the regular show, at least in season 1, as a consequence of, sort of modern television making, really didn't get the opportunity to do. So if we can get these additional sort of vignettes on top of that allow us to kind of take that more reflective pause and look more deeply at some of the characters, I'm all for it. Bring me a new short trek every month that there is not either a Discovery or a Picard show or a Lower Decks or anything like that. I'm all in.
Sweet. Allie, what about you? Are you a fan of the short treks?
Yes, I'm very much in the same boat. I like that they allowed us it was just enough, that kind of 15-minute, one of them was 18 minutes, but just around that time mark of those little kind of morsels that we wanted, especially with Brightest Star with Saru. I was so interested in learning about his character, but then in Runaway, we got to learn more about Tilly, and we just got all these little great portraits that hopefully they'll extend upon either in another short trek or maybe in a novel. I'd love that for Calypso to learn more about that. But
yeah, I think there's been chatter of not rumored, not that it's going to happen, but that a graphic novel about Calypso might be really cool to read, something like that, because who knows what we're going to get in any relation to that one. Of the 4 short treks, that one was definitely the what's the word? The most removed from, not having any main characters save the ship, who we only know as Discovery and not as Zora. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. I really enjoyed these. I am glad that we got a little tidbit of Discovery every month. It was a lot of fun, and I liked watching social media and seeing the reactions, because they were very mixed, and it seemed a lot of people, it was either love or hate it, depending on which one. I did some polls, and we can maybe talk about that at the end of the show if we have time. But let's go ahead and talk about the Brightest Star, which, as Allie said, was our Saru episode and was pretty much heralded as being a character deep dive on Saru, that we were going to go to his homeworld, we were going to meet some of his family. And indeed, those things happened. So overall, first reaction, Allie, did you like this short trek? Did it live up to your expectations?
Yes, it did. I very much liked it. I thought that it offered just this great backstory. While it wasn't too much of a backstory, we weren't really overwhelmed with so much of this information about Saru. It was just enough. I thought, he's such a fascinating character, and in Discovery, we know almost nothing about him. So we kind of got to see not just his own development, but we got to see his family and his homeworld, and it offered just that inside look that I wanted. So it was great.
Awesome. Alex, what about you?
I really like this one. It's a really interesting contrast with Calypso.
Yeah.
Where Calypso was very different and very experimental, and felt like they, just wanted to kind of take an opportunity to try out something radically different to see how it would land.
Mm-hmm.
And the Brightest Star was much more of a very traditional Star Trek episode, right? It's an origin story, it's a Prime Directive story, it's an overcoming great odds to flourish story, and so it really was sort of wrapping yourself in a comfort blanket, where Calypso I thought was more challenging, and I think that's why the response to it was much more polarized. When it came to the Brightest Star, I mean, it was kind of classic Star Trek through and through.
Yeah. This one felt like the most intimate to me. I say that oddly enough, with Calypso having been a very intimate story between Kraft and Zora. This was intimate in a different way. It was you were not only getting to know Saru more, you were on Kaminar, you were in his home, and the entire story. It was very touching, and I think at this point I can certainly say that The Brightest Star is my favorite short Trek. And it just continues to kind of drive home that I think that Saru has become my favorite Discovery character, even though that's still really hard to pick a favorite. But okay, so here's the big question I have to ask, and I'm sure everybody talked about this, but I don't know. What was your all's reaction when we found out about the Baul and how they take the Kelpians from Kaminar? Alex, was it what you were expecting? Was it a little bit different?
Actually, it was pretty different than what I was expecting, but not in a bad way. When all we really knew up to this point was the sort of things that Saru said in the pilot episode about how his species map is binary and my people are hunted for food, which made it sound much more like kind of a lions on the savannah type situation. And this was very different than that, but actually probably makes a whole lot more sense for an advanced society to sort of treat the Kelpians much more like how we treat livestock today, rather than more of kind of a more primitive sort of hunter-gatherer society in which there are Kelpians running away. I mean, it certainly could be the case that in a previous iteration that was true, but the Baul have sort of advanced to the point where they sort of have a farming technique for Kelpians, but I've got it to the point where there had to be a reason why the Kelpians were sort of satisfied with their lot in some ways. And I think this really nicely does that, because it says that it's part of their religion, and we know that religion is a really powerful thing. And so as a result, you kind of have this status quo on Kaminar.
Yeah, I guess they're like cage-free Kelpians. I mean, it's a good point, because farming practices in America are still not great.
Not great.
I say don't go read about how your food is farmed and processed, but actually do, because it might change how you look at food. However, it does make sense that they would try to keep their food source as happy and content as possible, because happy and content Kelpians and or cows and or other animals ideally are healthier. But that's a very, very general statement and is not always true. It's something that I think we want to believe that, doesn't necessarily happen based on the actual farming practices. But Allie, what was your reaction when we found out the story was a little bit different?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up a point that while you guys were talking came to me. So I know in the pilot that Saru says all that stuff about how they're hunted as livestock, but how do they actually know where those people go? Did it happen, like, did they do it in the Baul hunted differently and now they changed their tactics? Because, I mean, we never really see where those people go. Are they for food, or are they used for slave labor, etc.? I mean, Saru's father kind of mentions that the Baul need to be sustained in a way and people have to be sacrificed, but we never really figure out how exactly it is that they sustain them, I guess. Yeah. So I guess that's where I'm coming from.
We had reference to the pain of Ahari, which it wasn't even explained. I don't know if either of you read the Saru book, Discovery book, Fear Itself. I think Alex, you might have.
Yes, and it did not it named Kaminar as the home planet, but just
Right.
like the first season of Discovery, it sort of skirted around a lot of those extra details. Apparently, James Swallow had written his own version of what Kaminar was like, and ultimately was told by the writers' room to take all that out because they wanted to they wanted to do this, and put it in the show.
I don't recall like getting any of the religious aspect in the book. I don't remember reading about, the watchful eye and the pain of Bahari or any of that. So, spoiler alert, my understanding is that we are supposed to be seeing Saru's family, which we haven't mentioned yet, but his father, which I wrote down in cursive and can't read my own handwriting, Eridar, right? Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. And his sister Sarana. And I think we're supposed to see them again sometime in season 2, maybe, hopefully.
Yes, we are. And I speculate that the piece that we're going to see in season 2 is sort of what happens after the Kelpians are harvested by the Baul, and we'll see the Baul and sort of the implications of that. Total guess, just based upon like 3 frame grabs from the trailer. But I think we're going to get much more of a deep dive into what happens after the Kelpians are what seem to be transported up to the Baul ship.
Turn into a very good setup with the short trek, because there are questions. I mean, all of these short treks have kind of left us with some questions, because you can't answer everything in less than 20 minutes, right? So I'm definitely looking forward to that, and finding out more. But yeah, I was a little surprised as the episode unfolded, and we heard, because like you, Alex, I was very much thinking of like a lion and gazelle type of chase, and that's not what happened. And in the past couple months, I guess it's been since the episode came out, like Allie, I was questioning, okay, what really happens, and how number one, like, did they evolve, like you said, Alex, from some kind of lion gazelle type hunt into this very organized sustainment of the Baul, we'll say. But yeah, we just see them transported, or I think some people assume they were vaporized. To me, I kind of assumed it was a transporter situation, but then we don't know what happens after the fact. But I came across this quote in The Hollywood Reporter from Doug Jones. When talking about it in season 1, I pictured it more like cattle being herded, more of a farming situation that my people went along with. I looked at the Brightest Star script and saw it was more ritualistic. That was a bit of a surprise, but a good one that makes more sense. We're sentient beings, we're smart, we're imaginative, and emotional beings that can connect and have families. So it wouldn't make sense that we act like cattle. We accept the ritualistic religious aspect, that there's a great balance to be had, and we're a part of that. So I just really appreciate that, Doug Jones had the same reaction and was able to process that and change his perspective of what happens with this race. So I'm definitely excited to see what happens, whenever we see them, because we certainly haven't gotten a glimpse of that with any of the previews yet. I don't know, any speculation on how we may see them again? Do we just go back to Kaminar?
I'm kind of like on the same board with Alex, where how can they introduce something like the Baul and do something and show that and then just like let it lie,
So they've talked about how in season 2, there are these 7 red bursts and the red angels and all of that. And the way they've talked about the structure of the season is that story will kind of underpin the whole 14 episodes, but that there will be sort of little kind of more episodic pieces and side quests, and rather than being one total story, it might be 5 or 6 stories that have sort of kind of themes that connect them all together. And I think that, we will probably, through part of the journey that the ship goes on, find our way back to Kamenar for some reason.
Yeah.
The Baul will have some piece of information about the red bursts, or maybe one of them is nearby. And that sort of takes them into proximity, and then there's this opportunity to sort of interact with them. I think we may see something like that happen, over the course of one episode, which I think is fabulous.
Yeah.
I think I like the idea of more of merging the sort of season one true serialized, peak television way of telling a story with sort of the older style of having sort of discrete episodes that told their own individual stories. So I think it could be fun.
Yeah. And I mean, it's going to be a big deal because Saru left. Like, he sacrificed his connection to his planet, his people, and his family. They had no idea. I feel like his sister kind of was curious. Like, there's maybe something going on here, but I'm not sure if she knew what was happening or not. I'm a really light sleeper personally, so if someone was playing with computer parts in my room, like, it would wake me up. But I'm really, really excited to see the reunion, especially with Serana. I thought that Serana, despite not having many lines and not really getting to speak them until the middle of the short trek, I thought she was really beautiful. I thought her makeup was really, I don't want to say she looked like a girl, but they were able to, again, like, make her makeup different. And just her eyes, I don't know about you guys, but I found her eyes to be a lot like Laurel, just like very expressive, and that a lot of her emotion was coming through her eyes and not so much the rest of the makeup.
Yeah, I love the quote that she says right before Saru kind of meets up with Giorgio, when she says, hands him the little, like, whether those are shears or a knife or whatever she hands him. And she says, look down every now and then, there's beauty there as well.
Yeah.
I thought that was, I mean, not just in Saru's situation, but just a great quote in today's world too.
Yeah, definitely. Well, did you guys have any comments about his sister or his dad?
I thought they were interesting characters, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of them. It is interesting, because Saru is sort of the, that his father is this religion, basically a priest of, whatever this Kelpian religion is. And Saru, his son, is the one who is sort of the black sheep, and that he, sort of rebels against the religion and ends up leaving. I think there could be a lot of really interesting stuff when he returns in season 2, between those two characters as they sort of grapple with their very divergent life paths.
Yeah, I found them both really intriguing characters. So I'm definitely curious what Aradar's reaction is going to be. I can't imagine he's going to be very happy. But I assume that maybe they've assumed that Saru was taken or died. I mean, obviously there was no body. Like, he disappeared. There's no body. Maybe they found the remnant of the Baul ship that Saru was using. But did you guys find that Saru's ability to kind of hack into the system and figure out how it worked, did that surprise you at all, or did it fit in with his character? Alex, what about you?
I think it was probably one of those things where you've only got 15 minutes in which to tell a story, and you could easily spend 5 minutes trying to explain how he got the technological skills necessary to be able to understand it. They did seem to imply the passage of time. So, even though the way it was sort of presented, you could look at it as he figured it out right away, it did also seem like you could take from that there was a period of time over which he was sort of learning how it worked and taking it apart and putting it back together again. And, it could just be the case also that the Kelpians, even though they don't live a particularly technologically sophisticated life do have a natural affinity for technology. That's definitely an attribute that we've seen before in Star Trek, that there are some species for whom that's just something that comes naturally to them. But it's one of those things where I think we have to be sort of aware that they're telling these kind of short 15-minute stories, and as a result, a lot of the kind of context and explanations for things that probably would be significantly more built out if it were a full episode, they just don't have the time for. And so, they just sort of get glossed over, which is a choice, right? I mean, on the one hand, you could look at that as bad writing and just convenient writing. But on the other hand, I think, it is sort of justifiable in some ways, given that would you rather kind of, move on with the more substantive part of the story, or would you rather dwell on, kind of answering these particular questions that ultimately don't have all that much of an impact on the overall story?
Yeah, that's great. Good words there. Allie, what about you?
Going off of that, I think that's a great way to phrase it, because a lot of people have been kind of not so sure or have been criticizing those little tiny like idiosyncrasies that they're finding. But I mean, you could, for any Star Trek episode, you could find something wrong with it if you were really trying to find something wrong with it. But wrapping it back around to the whole like Baul piece of technology, first of all, he had like a little instruction booklet. Either he drew that, or did it come with the Baul piece, or did another Kelpian like have it, or had Kelpians been using technology in the past? That's one thing where I was like, where did that little like diagram of how to do that come from? And did he draw it? Or, I mean, Saru obviously has that kind of Starfleet officer kind of persona where he's very curious. He's not really complacent with what's happening. And that would definitely be motivation enough to try to send out a message to see if anyone could help. So maybe there's just a lot of questions, but I understand why not all the questions that I want to be answered will be answered, because it was a short trek.
I also felt that the way that he had him question his father and just be so inquisitive kind of helped balance any disbelief of his ability to use the technology. It kind of made me feel like, okay, he's driven to do this. He's definitely asking a lot of questions, and an inquisitive person, and that type of personality and motivation was convincing enough for me that he could figure out how to use the technology. Again, like the passing of time is helpful and everything. I think somewhere towards the part in the episode where he says goodbye to Serana, maybe before he met Giorgio. I'm not sure. Unfortunately, somewhere on the internet, someone totally spoiled the guest star appearance for me. Yeah, I wasn't getting to watch the short treks as they aired. They're on a night when I have another commitment, and so it would be at least a day or two before I got to watch them. And yes, both the Brightest Star and the Escape Artist were spoiled, which really it's such a bummer. So despite that, by the time we got to him meeting Giorgio and Giorgio walking off the shuttle, somewhere in there, I pretty much burst into tears, especially when she told him that he was extraordinary. There's something about these short treks, and it's happened in everyone up to the Escape Artist, where there was some kind of affirmation like this between Tilly and Poe. Like they both told each other, they were, I think that Poe said she was being extraordinary. But then at the end of the episode, they both kind of gave each other an affirmation of, I don't remember the exact words, but you're really great. You're a really great person. And then even in Calypso, Kraft said that to Zora. He said, you're a really great woman. So that stuck out to me because I think it's really important to uplift other people. And I think that is a facet of Star Trek. We don't see it all the time, but in the ways that characters work together and uplift each other, I just thought it was super special. So what was your reaction when Georgiou walks off the ship? And of course, this is Prime Georgiou. Allie, did you lose it?
I definitely did. I was lucky enough not to have it spoiled for me. I also, before I had a chance to watch it, I didn't get to watch it immediately when it came out. So I stayed off social media because I knew that something would have happened or I would have come across something. But I love that they really wrapped it back around with Georgiou. I mean, then we come to see why Saru has an important connection with her in the end in season 1 before all this stuff happens with Prime Georgiou. But she sees what he's done, and like you said, gives him kind of that affirmation. And to him, he was probably just doing what he thought was right. You know, why my people are getting taken, and I'm just trying to reach out. But for him to be given that, I'm sure was very meaningful for him. I love the little scene too, where Georgiou opens up the communicator, and Discovery does this really well, where you hear it translated into the language and they have a few little dialogue points and then they're all speaking English. I love that. I love that.
Alex, what about you?
Oh, I love the Georgiou reveal. I saw a few people say on the internet afterwards that they thought it was, small universe syndrome, and of course it had to be a character from one of the other shows, and I think that's totally missing the point. Because I think that it really deepens the relationship between those two characters. It's not like Odo showed up all of a sudden.
Right.
It's a character who there clearly was a pre-existing relationship. We saw that from the very first few minutes of the Vulcan Hello. And really also, I think, highlights the kind of brother-sister relationship between Saru and Burnham. Because we kind of learn from this that Georgiou was not only Saru's commanding officer, but also effectively his mother figure in the same way that that Georgiou held that role for Burnham as well. And it does kind of, I think, go back to really help kind of highlight, those opening scenes in the Vulcan Hello, where you do have that kind of very sibling adversarial relationship between Saru and Burnham. It kind of does, I think, deepen that and enrich it by by demonstrating that it's because they both feel this really strong connection to this captain, and they both have really good reason to. Georgiou was the character who kind of taught Burnham how to be a human being after spending most of her life with Vulcans, and Georgiou was the character who rescued Saru from his home planet and sort of opened up the whole galaxy before him. So when the shuttle came down, I had no idea the reveal was coming. And when you saw the three little letters on the front of the shuttle that was like SNZ or something like that, I went, oh my God, is it going to be? And it was fabulous.
It was, I just loved it. I can't get enough of Prime Georgiou. So anytime we get to see her, it's just the best thing ever. And I'm sorry, but I feel like, criticizing that as being small universe syndrome is just criticizing for the sake of criticizing. Like, you're missing the point. If that's really
I think that's right.
Sorry, listeners. But it was just such a perfect way to wrap it up. And he goes off with her, and we have the quote, "I saw hope in the stars. It was stronger than fear, and I went toward it." And even just saying that quote, I get a little choked up. Because again, for me personally, if you've listened to the show and you've heard my story and what I've been through and why Saru has become just such a powerful character for me, that quote is pretty much like a good summary of my life. Like, I went through some very scary stuff, and it was hard, but I saw that there was something better on the other side. And it just, by then, I was just bawling and bawling and bawling. Erica Lapolte and Bo Young Kim wrote this episode. This was the first episode written by actual writers from season 1. And so I just applaud them. I think it was done really well, and this definitely, to me, it felt cohesive. Even with the questions still put out there, I didn't feel like I was left in the dark, or I was missing too much, or there were plot holes or anything else. Because again, and I guess the message that, here's Saru in a situation which is basically impending death. And who wants to sit around and wait for their death? He's the one person that's asking these questions, and wanting to go out and explore and find answers. And he does that of his own accord, which again is just something that's so very Star Trek. I can't say enough good things about this episode or this short track. So yes, Alex, is there any other points, anything that we didn't talk about that you want to mention about The Brightest Star?
Just that in some ways I feel like it could have been longer.
Yeah.
They clearly made the choice to make this, a 15-minute short track, but this one easily could have been expanded out. Unlike The Escape Artist, which we'll get on to talking about, which I felt like was the perfect length. If it had gone on any longer, the joke would have played out and would have felt very tired and forced.
Yeah.
This one, though, there was, I think there was a whole lot more that they could have mined. And I think, we will see a lot more in season 2. So I'll kind of, hold any comments that are sort of critical about that. But it is the one that I sort of felt most like I wanted a lot more out of this story. I really liked what we got, but it could have gone deeper. It could have gone further. And I think we'll see that in season 2, which is why I think they went the short trek direction. But at this point, kind of between the two, I still have a ton of questions, and I really want to dive deep into it because I love this character and I want to see more.
Absolutely. Allie, what about you? Anything we didn't talk about you want to bring up?
I just think I love how this short trek, we really see how not just seeing Saru on the Discovery and how he acts there, but we see how he is a Starfleet officer growing up and at home as well, because he embodies all those characteristics of what we think a Starfleet officer should be. Someone who's curious and someone who is not content with just letting things happen. And I do wonder too, there are the whole Prime Directive questions here, but I wonder in the agreement, because Georgiou says that in the agreement we made with Starfleet for me to take you, I wonder if it was even originally that, or if it was original that Saru would be joining Starfleet, or if he would just have gotten off of Kaminar. So I wonder if, we see he embodies those characteristics. So obviously he was the perfect candidate for a Starfleet officer. And then we see him become one, the first Kelpian in Starfleet.
Yeah.
So I love it. And then the resonating with hope is greater than fear. That is just a basic principle of Star Trek. And it just kind of closed it up so well.
Yeah. I will say, and I didn't know, the way they tied in the beginning, because he first says, since I was a boy, whenever I looked up, I saw hope. And then at the very end, we have the other, I saw hope in the stars. So just the writing there and the way they tied that together, I thought was really nice, and a nice little bow on a pretty package that is The Brightest Star. So I think we give this one a watch it, not that we're rating them, but great little short trek, not required to read Fear Itself by James Swallow, but definitely do check out that book because it's still a really awesome Saru story, and Discovery, or Shenzhou story, I guess, in and of itself. So I guess let's go ahead and move on to The Escape Artist. So our Harry Mudd episode, which I've decided the actual name should have been Sipping Jippers on the Beach. I should have Googled what a jipper is. Does anyone know what a jipper is besides just some kind of exotic drink, I assume?
It's a made up term.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go.
Which just means that we have to come up with the recipe for a jipper.
Oh, we can do this before STLV. We've got it. That will be at the Tricorder Transmission's birthday party. We will figure out. We'll get Marty from Reading Trek, since he's a bartender. We'll get Marty to make up a sipping jipper. He already made a drink that Disneyland wound up, putting on the menu. So he makes good drinks. All right. Well, very cool. So this episode, I will say it's my least favorite short trek. That does not mean I feel negatively about it. I just don't have as many notes on the escape artist as I did the Brightest Star. So I'm relying on Alex because I heard that Alex really liked this one. But I'm actually going to start off with Allie's reaction. Allie, what did you think about the escape artist?
I actually really liked it. I didn't even have a chance to watch it until, gosh, what was it, yesterday? So I am still coming with very fresh eyes out of it. I think that Rainn Wilson does a fantastic Harry Mudd. There are differences between TOS Mudd and Discovery Mudd, but I love the portrayal of that, the feisty, interesting, devious Harry Mudd. And I still think it's very akin to the TOS character. And I just loved it. It was just, it was the comic relief that we needed, and there's a twist in it. I just loved it. Absolutely.
Awesome. Yeah. And Alex, what about you?
If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. This was my favorite short trek. I thought it was really funny. I thought the twist was really clever. I thought that it was the most comfortable of all of the short treks, being only 15 minutes long. As I said before, it was exactly as long as it needed to be. It shouldn't have been any longer. And it felt like the most kind of complete 15-minute vignette that wasn't or shouldn't have been something more than it was. I thought Rainn Wilson's performance was fabulous. It was super fun to see Harry Mudd again. I don't know the extent to which I necessarily, want to see him interacting with the Discovery crew again. But I think I enjoy seeing the character when there are sort of fun and interesting things to do with him. And I think this is what that was. I thought there were fun call outs to the Star Trek canon. And this actually made me really excited for Lower Decks.
Yes.
Because it was written by Mike McMahon, who is a writer on Rick and Morty and who is the new showrunner for the animated Star Trek Lower Decks series. And I've never watched Rick and Morty, so people love it, but I've just never seen it, so I don't know the style of humor. But I really like the style of humor that Mike McMahon used in The Escape Artist. It felt it was both respectful of the source material, but also sort of found the joy and the humor in it. There's the one line that Mudd has about where he's hanging from the ceiling and he's talking to the Orion and he says, I'll give you so much money that you can wear a cape. You'll be such a rich man, you can wear a cape. And why? Because rich men can do whatever they want. And I thought that was very funny and kind of tied back to the large number of capes that there were in the original series, and how they do to a modern audience look faintly ridiculous. So I thought that was really fun, and it made me feel more confident that, Lower Decks as a show, if it has that same kind of style of humor to it, which is reverent of the source material rather than being, poking fun at the source material.
Right.
I actually think that could be a really fun project. And so I went from being sort of thinking about that and thinking, I'm not I really hope that lots of people love it. I don't know that it's going to be for me, to turning 180 on it and being, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing this and seeing, what comes of it.
Yeah, I think that this was definitely a good exercise in showcasing Mike McMahon and what he can do, because I also have not seen Rick and Morty. I know a bajillion people who love it. I maybe I've seen like 5 minutes of it, but it's just not really the type of entertainment that I care for. But I've heard great things, and I thought that this was done really well, and it definitely fit into the 15/20 minute time slot really well. I have to give a shout out. I don't think she listens to any of our podcasts, but so I was really excited that my Trekkie bestie Claire Little did the recap for this for Trek Core and referred to Mud in the black outfit as a Breen dominatrix, which I just thought was absolutely hilarious. But so she mentions in her article, because part of the setup here was that we had Mud telling the story, and then we had these flashbacks, so to speak, to Mud in other circumstances, talking about being in these situations. Did you guys pick up on the fact that it could possibly be other Muds, or did you totally, I guess, fall for it? Allie?
I totally fell for it. I had no idea. I was like, that's why the twist for me, I was literally like gaping at my television because I was like, what? Totally blew my mind. And it's funny because I think part of the reason is that I was just like having a good time. I was just going with it, and I was like, oh, this is totally everything that this is Harry Mudd. Like, this is what would happen. So when they threw the twist, I was like, no way. It just blew my mind. But I mean, hey, quite an ingenuity and a smart way to not get caught.
Yeah, I loved it. Alex, what about you? Did you fall for it?
Yeah, I thought it was. I fell for it, and I thought it was. It was a lot of fun seeing him in the different environments, and then it being revealed that they were different android duplicates. It was just a funny and very fun twist.
Yeah, like I said, unfortunately, somebody just stay off Twitter, guys. Just stay off. So I kind of had pieced it together. I still loved it because it was such a good tie-in to Mud and to iMud especially, and the android, the evolution of the android, the great android caper, we'll call it. But in the TrekCore article, Claire pointed out that all of the Muds, all the androids must share a collective memory because the android was the one telling the story all along, and he knew what these other androids went through. So I thought that was really interesting because it's not something I'd really give much thought to until afterwards. And like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So did you guys did that come to mind after you put everything together, that they share this collective memory, like almost Borgish in a way, Alex?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the thing it made me think about was that he probably did that on purpose so that the androids would learn from each other's experience and get slightly better at avoiding being caught or learning to be more authentically Mud-like. And that he programs each one with, memories of the previous one so that it can, seem more real and authentic and not just like it's, sort of giving up. I mean, clearly the androids themselves had pretty limited operational capacity and utility, because in each of the scenarios it was sort of the same thing that was happening and a lot of the same language was being used. And so I think that's why I saw someone comment online about how well if these Mud androids exist, why is Data so special in the next generation 100 years later?
Oh boy.
I think it's clear from this short trek that the androids don't really do very much. They don't really think for themselves. They're sort of programmed to pretend that way.
Right.
Like if you were dealing with talking to one of those computer phone systems, they make you think they're real, but they're not. They're just kind of going through the motions. That was sort of what the androids were as well.
Yeah. Allie, any thoughts?
Yeah, I actually, when they arrive on the Demilo, when Tevrin brings the android Mud, it's interesting because they when they open the doors to see all the other android muds, it still seems though that the android has no knowledge that it is an android, because you could see on the face of the mud that Tevrin had with him that it was kind of like a surprise, and then kind of just reverted back into the whole like sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. And then they all said it and it was annoying, but
sipping jippers on a beach somewhere.
Yeah, but I think that is really interesting, and definitely it would be smart to program them that way, because yeah, they have similar patterns of speech, and I'm sure that all the places that they were sending them off to had relatively the same thing happening, where everyone's looking for mud anyways, so these kind of responses would be ideal for that situation. So I'm just still kind of flabbergasted by the fact that he did this. And I mean, it just kind of shows his insanity. Like, it's just like front and center. And
Yeah,
it's just like blows my mind. And I mean, I wonder though too, because with all this, obviously he is making a lot of money selling all these android muds to all these people that are trying to turn him into the Federation. So in the end, he is coming away with quite a bit of profit.
yeah. I really liked that the Harry Mudd, the version that we saw of Harry Mudd in this short trek, was a bit removed from the, as people like to say, darker version that we saw previously in the first season of Discovery. Harry Mudd is a bit of a controversial character out there, and this definitely felt more comedic than necessarily dark or murderous. And I liked that. I don't dislike the way that they have the character in Discovery. I mean, I really enjoyed him. I've enjoyed this new interpretation of him, but I liked that this was just a bit lighter than what we've seen before. Like, no one died. No one was being blown up 50 times, 300 times, however many times it happened in magic to make the sanest man go mad. But I don't know. I'm curious about your all's thoughts, because I know it's been a talking point in this season about this Harry Mudd and what we've seen. And Claire had some really good insights in this article that I do want to read, and I guess I'll get your reaction to after. She says, the version of Mudd we've seen throughout Discovery is certainly darker and more overtly murderous than the one we meet in the original series, but I think it's a matter of degree, not distinction. Even in his original incarnation, Mudd was never straight comic relief, nor was he harmless. His humor and charisma were always calculated plays, and there was always a wide and unmistakable streak of ruthlessness running through his character. And I just props to Claire. Like, I tweeted that, but I just think that is so well worded, well written, and accurate, that it's just been a major complaint. I don't mean to go off on a big Harry Mudd tangent here, but I think that this character fits in with TOS Mudd more than a lot of people want to give him credit for. And so I'm just curious, Alex, what do you think about what Claire said and about this character in Discovery overall?
Oh, I think Claire is 100% right, because the character as portrayed in the original series might have been comedic, but what he was trying to do was not really all that comedic. I mean, the ultimate outcome of the schemes in I, Mudd and in Mudd's Women were pretty nefarious. Yes, it was played for laughs, but it's still not. He was not a harmless criminal. We'll put it that way. And I think the escape artist kind of serves to provide a bridging link between the behavior of Harry Mudd in Choose Your Pain and Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, and with his appearances in the original and the animated series. Mm-hmm. To kind of demonstrate that this character that we saw in this certain situation in Discovery Season 1, who had more of a harder edge to him because of the particular circumstances in which he found himself then, does sort of does have these kind of more peculiar depths to him that leads you into the more lighter and comedic side of the character. So I thought it was a really nice way of linking the two. And of course, we can't go without mentioning that one of the android muds in the DeMilo cargo bay was wearing the purple blazer with the epaulets and the tassels from very similar to the coat that Roger Carmel wore in his appearances in the original series.
I love that. We'll talk a little bit more about these tie-ins in a second. Allie, what about you?
I thought that it was very, even when Mudd appeared in season 1, I thought that it was very appropriate for Discovery, because Discovery does kind of take a darker tone because of the war and everything going on. So I honestly thought it was fine. And I did like too, though, that this kind of gave us, it was just completely different than the other short treks. And that's why I think it was really refreshing for me. It definitely provided a little bit of comic relief, but also, just something different. We had, from Runaway, we had two people making a connection and realizing what they could do. And Calypso, we had a kind of love story, but not really. And then Brightest Star, we had a origin story. And then this with the escape artist was something completely different as well. So I just think that that's why the short treks were done so well, because each of them was something different. We didn't feel like we were getting overkill on, we don't want 2 origin stories back to back. We kind of want to space them out. We want to make it fresh and keep it moving coming into season 2.
Yeah, I think if anything, I might have just switched or I would have preferred to have had the escape artist and then the Brightest Star, just because the Brightest Star to me just sets up going back into Discovery, whereas the escape artist, I'm not sure if we know that we're going to see Harry Mudd again or not. And I there's not enough there, I think, to make like a Harry Mudd spinoff type of thing. Like I like the character, and I like Rainn Wilson and what he's done with it. And I, would like to see more of him, but I don't necessarily know that I want to see more of him within Discovery, if that makes sense. But yeah, I would have switched them, but that's just a personal thing for me. I still thought this was a lot of fun. And as Alex has noted, there were quite a few references, tie-ins to other episodes. So Alex, do you want to name off what you saw? I'm sure I got some. I'm sure Allie got some, but you're the expert here. You were so good at this on Trek Core. So I'm handing the reins over to you.
We had the Tellarite, Tevrin Crit, who was played by the same actor who played the Tellarite Admiral in Discovery Season 1 towards the end of the season. We had Orions, who we also saw in the Discovery Season 1 finale. Klingon. As I say, Mudd was wearing one of the Mudds was wearing the jacket, a similar jacket to the jacket that Roger Carmel wore when he appeared in the original series. On the ship at the end, you can see the Andorian space helmet that Mudd emerged from the space whale wearing in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, kind of propped up against the side. And then Tevrin Crit, when he's recounting Mudd's crimes, also mentions 1 count of penetrating a space whale, which I think was a Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad reference, to which Mudd's response was, you had to be there.
Yeah.
And I think that was it.
Okay. Yeah, I think I caught most of that. And then, of course, the whole tie-in with the android storyline, which I just thought that was really the genius part for me. Even though it spoiled it, I still didn't know how it was all going to play out, right? So at least I didn't lose that whole part. And that's good, because that still made it fun for me. But yeah, I just thought it was such a great setup. And I really like what you said, Alex, about this short trek kind of being a bridge between this darker version of Mud and the slightly more comedic version of Mud that we see in TOS. But yeah, listen for another podcast we'll eventually do about Harry Mudd and how sex trafficking is bad. And okay, I'll just stop there. I have words. All right. Was there anything about this episode that you wanted to note that we have not talked about, Allie?
Oh gosh, I guess I will mention first the one joke that I thought resonated the most with me, or I thought was hilarious, was when he is in the little like Orion prison, and when he's talking about the capes, and he's like, "Oh, it'll make everyone green with envy," and then he's like, "Oh, greener." I thought that was hilarious, but I love this little inside look into. I mean, not just we see Mud almost go through these kind of, the dialogue with the androids are very much the same in both of the stories, and what we thought was a flashback. But I mean, I imagine that Mud would say very much the same things if it was actually him.
Yeah.
So we really kind of just see how he works, and we get kind of an inside look into how he would handle a situation like this. And for me, it was spot on.
Yeah, same. Alex, what about you?
Sipping jippers on a beach, jippers on a beach, jippers on a beach. I just thought that was really fun. It was fun. It was funny. A really nice, morsel to take us into the second season. And then we're a week away now from Star Trek Discovery Season 2 as of the time of recording this episode. And I cannot wait.
Yes. And I will say for our listeners, so we just recently released our character deep dive on Ash Tyler. We still have Dr. Hugh Culber and Michael Burnham to do, and we are going to do them. I know they're not all done before we start to the season yet, but one of the things with Dr. Culber, and sorry for a tangent, but I feel like a lot of what's, like, we've said what there is to say about Dr. Culber and what happens. And part of why I want to save it is to see what happens with his character in season 2. I'm not saying we're going to wait until the end of season 2 or wherever we see him again. I really want to talk about that character when we know a little bit more about how he's coming back to the show. Spoilers, sorry. And then Michael Burnham will do after that. But yeah, I can't believe next week the show's coming back. I am so super excited to see Pike and Spock and the crew and see what happens. But I had done some polls because for me, I have a hard time ranking these. Like I even despite like not totally loving the Escape Artist, just because I didn't have like an emotional reaction to the Escape Artist, nor did I really have an emotional reaction to Calypso. So for me, certainly Runaway and the Brightest Star are kind of like, Brightest Star is my top favorite, and then Runaway, and then Calypso, and then Escape Artist. But in the poll that I ran it via our DiscoTrek Twitter, which is just at @disco_trek. The Escape Artist was in the lead until like the last 30 minutes, and Calypso jumped in and won the prize. So I'm curious for you guys how you rank these short treks. I guess Alex will go with you first.
So Escape Artist, Brightest Star, Calypso, Runaway for me. And
so just backwards.
Yeah. But it's pretty much a tie between Calypso and Runaway. And for me, just because something is at the bottom doesn't mean that I didn't like it. I actually liked Runaway. I just liked the other ones more.
Yep, exactly. Same here. Allie, what about you?
Mine is exactly the same as Alex's. I'm having a really tough time though between, like, I feel like Brightest Star and Runaway are on the same level for me. Yeah. So it's so hard for me to interchange them, because I did really like Runaway as well. It was very like personal to me and emotional for me, that like connection between Poe and Tilly. Yeah. So it's sometimes just so hard to choose. I like them all. So.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to, I hope we're never on Trek ranks to rank the short treks. That would be so super difficult. but yeah, this experiment in Trek, I think, was a success, at least for the three of us here, it seems, and many of our friends that got to watch them. My hopes that by the time we get the next ones, everyone outside of the US and Canada gets to watch them. My understanding was that they were airing in Canada. Is that correct?
Yes, they were airing in Canada. They just were not airing. They were airing in the US and Canada and not anywhere else.
And that's it. So yeah, I mean, super bummer. And I, no, not going to place blame because there's a lot going on and how it gets out there. But I felt bad for all of our friends who are not in the U.S. and Canada, and I hope they get to watch them very, very soon. Nobody wants to be left out of Star Trek. So to all the big executives that listen to our little podcast here, please take those words to heart.
Yeah.
All right. So I guess that wraps up our Short Treks reviews. We look forward to seeing you guys again. I think by the time this gets released, I'm not sure when it's going to come out, but hopefully before next season starts, we'll be in the unofficial Star Trek Las Vegas convention group. Again, just look for the DiscoTrek album art. There will be information about the episode that we're talking about, recording time, all that jazz. And all you got to do is comment to be entered. In the meantime, if you want to continue the conversation, Alex, where can we find you on social media?
The best place to find me is on Twitter. I am at Alexander T. Perry. And if you're interested in Weekly Trek, the weekly news show, you can find it also on Twitter at Weekly Trek.
Yay, so excited. Oh, and Allie, where can we find you?
I can also be found primarily on Twitter. I go by the 23-year-old Trekkie, and the handle there is at ttrekkie. I'm at the same handle on Instagram. My website is ttrekkie.wordpress.com. Also, if you want to send me an email, you can get in contact with me. My email is the.ttrekkie@gmail.com.
Woohoo! And watch out for Tau Talk Tuesdays.
Yes, if you didn't watch this last week, I did a character exploration events in row doing Tau Talk Tuesdays, so give it a watch.
Very, very cool. You can find me on Twitter at LLAPosper, which is LLAPAWSPER. The show, as I said, is at disco_trek. Our network is at Tricorder Show. We are the tricordertransmissions.com, and that is the same on Patreon. It's just patreon.com/the Tricorder Transmissions. We would love to have you join our Patreon family. We're also just really happy that you listen. And we're super excited when we get reviews for our shows, not just DiscoTrek, but all 1,047 shows here on the Tricorder Transmissions Network. We don't have 47, maybe one day. But we do have a lot of great shows that you should definitely check out. So pop onto the website and find us there. In the meantime, let's get revved up for season 2 of Discovery. Live long and prosper, and long live the Empire. See you later, guys.
If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach. If I had any money, I'd be sipping jippers on a beach somewhere. Jippers on a beach. Jippers on a beach.